And this is a beautiful dwarf apple tree. I love these because they only grow 8 to 10 feet tall.
When it comes to gardening, even the experts can make a mistake from time to time. Take this apple tree, for example. Dave Hanson admits he and his staff at Sage Gargen Herbs didn't take the time to plant it properly, and it shows.
But for the time being, it's a bit of our sorry example of what we did wrong, and we will make it right for this tree.
So if the experts can make mistakes, what about the rest of us? Well, not to worry. Hanson says there are some very easy tips to avoid some of the most common gardening errors. Let's start with what to do when you bring plants home from the greenhouse.
And you can see the roots are pretty tight inside here. So if this was planted directly into the ground, it would take forever to take off. It wouldn't establish quickly.
Hanson says there is a misconception that you have to handle plants delicately, avoiding the roots. Not so. In fact, you are encouraged to break open a tight root system, even using scissors to make cuts on the compass points to allow new roots to grow and the plant to thrive. He promises the crunching sound of breaking roots is actually a good thing.
If there is a central taproot, you don't want to disturb that, but everything else here can be opened up nicely, and these will grow into a wonderful new set of root branches that will create a very, very beautiful plant in the long run.
If you're putting your new plant into the ground, Hanson says there are a couple of non-negotiables. Once you've broken the roots and dug a deep enough hole for the plant, you need to throw in bone meal or other fertilizer. Then add water to the bottom of the hole before the plant goes in to make sure that root system is properly hydrated. Then, of course, firm the soil back around it and water it again.
You can definitely plant all through the summer months and right into the fall when it comes to perennials, but you really want to soak them so that they're getting a nice chance to never experience stress during the transplanting process.
But what if you're keeping your plants in containers? Then frequent hydration is even more important, especially if you're using a peat-based soil. The easiest way to tell if your container needs water: stick your finger into the dirt. If you sense moisture, it's probably good for the day.
But in the summertime, especially if you have a hot balcony or a patio or a deck, probably you want to check on your critical plants every day at least, unless it's been really cloudy or rainy. And the important thing when you're watering is you want the water to go right through to the base of the container. You want all of the root system to be well hydrated. So this one I checked, it definitely feels dry to the touch, and I'm going to give it a good soaking. And usually what I do is I let some of the water soak in. You can see some of the water is coming right through the drainage holes right away. But I generally let it sit for a second to allow that water to absorb into the soil. And then I give it a second little flush of water.
If you've planted herbs and want to avoid a spindly plant, Hanson says never pluck off the leaves. There is a proper way to prune to achieve a full and bushy product. It starts with a pair of sharp scissors on the central stems.
And you want to lock right into what are called internode points. That's where the scissors will kind of reach a point where they can't slide down any further because there's little baby leaves ready to grow off the sides. And so if you snip at that point, those little baby ones grow into 2 new branches and you get double the basil. And this is true of all your leafy herbs like oregano and parsley, or sorry, not parsley, but oregano, mint, basil.
Now, what about that apple tree we saw a few minutes ago? The mistake they made was something called plucking and planting, meaning the ground wasn't properly prepared before the plant went in.
The biggest mistake that people make when they're getting trees and shrubs and sort of longer term perennials is that they really sometimes feel like, oh, they've sort of spent their budget on the plant material, and so they don't pick up the fertilizers or some of the transplant fertilizers especially that can make a big difference to the settling in phase for the plants. So it's almost like you're undermining the success of your investment. So spending that extra $10 or $15 on the fertilizers will make a big difference to how well these plants do in the long term.
Hanson says never forget to water your new trees and shrubs. Just like other plants, they need tons of hydration when they're first in the ground. For more tips to make sure your garden thrives, you can visit Sage Garden's website at herbs.mb.ca. For Shaw TV's Go Winnipeg, I'm Kim Babij.